So with episode 5 of The Promised Neverland, we get a lot of information behind Ray's motivations, and basically the first 10 minutes of this episode were as tense as you could possibly imagine. Big thanks to the soundtrack really eating away at the background, being prominent enough that you're just like, this music is so intense and hype, and you just felt a wave of anxiety and you didn't know where this would go. Even as someone who read the source material, I was still just as nervous alongside Ray and Norman because just the way they were directing it, framing these shots. I love the moody atmosphere with the colors very gloomy and very brown and red colors used to really capture this wave of complex feelings and emotions. This episode was easily my favorite out of the 5. It did exactly what I was hoping for and a little bit extra. So to no surprise for a lot of anime originals, you're probably going to see, oh, Ray wasn't just selling them out for his own gain, but rather he was selling them out for his best friend's gain alongside his. But the idea of the central 3 characters, Norman, Ray, and Emma, it's very interesting because they're all brainiacs, they're all geniuses and highly skilled, but they all have their own behaviors and opinions on this escape. You got Emma, who essentially is like the mother bear. She wants all of her cubs to survive, and she will do anything that it takes. You get to see her shake down Ray at the end saying, I understand you were doing some things and maybe even sacrificing people up till now, never again. And I have to say, I loved how they detailed it. I was hoping for a bit more detail on that very pissed off Emma face, but I did think they captured that feeling of rage well enough that I was okay with it. And I think it really did, for the first time, probably shake Ray up, seeing someone like Emma, who has been very positive, maybe double-crossing her isn't the best idea. You have Norman, who is on Emma's side, but does think in a lot of ways similar to Ray, but does have that family connection. He does value this group, but at the same time recognizes that saving them all could be next to impossible, but because Emma wants it, he wants to side with her. And then you have Ray, the most logical one, but also the most cold out of the group, who says, we can accept us 3, and maybe Dawn and Gilda. Past that, no one else can logically escape from this plan. I like that. I like how you have so many pieces at play and how each of them are equally scary. Emma, you don't know what she's willing to do if she learns that someone like Ray doesn't actually want to save everyone when the time comes. You don't know what Norman's willing to do, and Ray was very frightening in this episode. Ray has been building this plan for 6 years, putting out the bunny so that they would learn the truth. He had plans to actually tell them everything, but because they didn't bring the bunny back and Mama found out, he had to kind of manipulate things in the shadows again. You're really seeing the building blocks from past episodes make a whole lot of sense, like why Norman was actually suspecting Ray, because he actually planned for all of them to basically sabotage themselves. He told Ray 2 locations, he told Gilda a location, and he told Dawn a location. That's how he was able to figure out who did it. But you're seeing this kind of back and forth that is so tense and so atmospheric that you are just like, are they gonna kiss and make up, or are they gonna shoot each other in the head? And that's what I was hoping for with this episode, and I think they absolutely nailed it. I love seeing the amount of times you're seeing this almost like Western style battle, back and forth. It seems like Norman has the upper hand, and then Ray will come in with this disturbing anime horror face and just throw it back in his face, and then you're seeing Norman scared. It's this back and forth kind of conversation that you don't know, are they coming out of this allies or friends? And then Ray says, I'm not your ally, I'm not your enemy, but we can be comrades. And I like that moment shortly after the scene where he's kind of looking at the picture of them, because this is his group of best friends. Even though he's doing these things and saying these things, he's just logically trying to keep his best friend safe, and he recognizes that not everyone can logically survive in this escape plan unless everything perfectly falls into place, which how often is everything gonna perfectly fall into place? But that back and forth and how Ray was kind of going over why he was doing the things that he was and how he got rewards from Mama to kind of like understand what the outside world has and what he could get out of it. The fact that how he knew how to experiment with the tracking devices because of these rewards, and how everything was being explored. I think they info dumped enough, but it didn't feel like actual info dumping. It honestly felt to me like the way they explored this kind of conversation, it felt like naturally 2 brainiac best friends outplaying the other and then eventually just revealing all their cards, and then you're kind of thinking back to episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're like, oh, that's why this happened like this, that's why Norman was suspecting early on, that's why he asked Emma these things, like all the things that you're probably thinking, especially if you go back and binge just the first 4 episodes, that conversation makes so much more sense, and you just see all the pieces up to now, which you thought were just interesting motivations and character dialogue, but were actually building blocks for this reveal. And the fact that we're only 5 weeks in, and we still have more than half of this anime left to go before the season wraps up, that's just how cool The Promised Neverland is for as much as it drops these bombshells, it continuously builds up to more and more bombshells before an arc truly ends, and that's what makes it so compelling to me. And I have to say, you know, for as smart as Norman is, arguably you might be able to say he's the smartest out of the three. A lot of people do like to say that. I'm kind of the belief they're all pretty equal, just they have different ways of being intelligent depending on the arc or depending on the point in the arc. It's interesting to see how in a period of like 12 minutes, you kept seeing this back and forth of terrified to, aha, I outplayed you and I revealed something you couldn't possibly imagine, and I'm willing to do things you can't possibly imagine. Like, you're seeing these characters shake up each other so much in such a short period of time that you're almost shitting your pants, because you're like, where is this truly going to go? And even as someone who read the manga, it was still so intense and disturbing to see that dialogue. I think their actors absolutely killed it, and I love how gloomy the scenes were looking, and how you're seeing someone like Norman, who really, at the end of last week, you thought he had the upper hand, and then by the time Ray leaves the room, he's really terrified. Like, if he doesn't, like he says, I will go with you and we won't save everyone, if he betrays him, would he get killed? And if Ray betrays Emma, like right now, everyone's saying they're on their side, but when the time comes, what does the outcome look like? Because everyone's willing to sabotage the other if they get in their way. And that's like, it's amazing. And I like the idea of why Norman is kind of still siding with Ray, because that's why he asked Emma, like, Emma, what would you do if you realized it was someone close to us who was betraying? And she said she would still take them. And that's why he wanted to believe in Ray, and that's why he still believes Ray is still a friend, even if he disagrees with the methods of the escape. This family dynamic is so interesting because you have this actual family, and yes, maybe someone like Ray is more specific and more loving on central characters like Norman, as well as Emma, maybe even Don and Gilda to a certain degree. He recognizes that not all of his family can be saved, where you have Emma, who's like, everyone's equal and no one should be put above the other, even if we are smarter or more physically capable. I love that. I love how much you keep, like, whoever you choose to focus on out of the central three, you're like, I kind of understand where they're coming from, and I kind of agree that they should do this, but then you think, like, you know, as much as people want to say someone like Emma's gullible, but like, she's skilled. She can if she puts her mind to it, why can't she get this done? I like that, especially now learning that, you know, they have a spy in their pocket. Like, feels like things could go smoothly, but at the same time, you know, it can't. And Don and Gilda in this episode, I thought were an interesting addition to this episode. They weren't needed. It could have just been that very tense atmosphere, but I like Don because some people are probably going to get annoyed at him, especially because he's going against the logical ones, the smartest of the group, saying like, no, I have to save them, because under his impressions, he thinks these characters are still alive and that they can be saved because they did lie. That's why lying isn't always the best outcome, because it can bite you in the ass, which Ray definitely said, because this is what happens. If you lead someone on to believe that they can save their dead friend, they're going to make stupid decisions, which is another reason why you can argue, well, maybe Ray's the smartest out of the three, but really they're all equally smart. They just all have their moments where they can show signs of weakness. So Don is acting on his own, and by the looks of the cliffhanger, someone's about to come in. But I do like how he's acting, because it's very realistic, it's very human, that he's pissed off that things aren't going according to plan, that his mother and this family isn't what it was originally. You know, a couple days back, this isn't what they are used to. And I think his emotional reaction is very realistic, especially for a child. And I like that. I like how they're dropping that cliffhanger very intense to get you excited for next week. It's the appropriate outcome. I'm sure people will be pissed off that Don is going against the smarter ones of the group, but that is a very realistic reaction. And his pissed off and screaming is what most kids his age would do, even if he is smarter than your average student. Like, seriously, that's what a kid should do. And I think his pissed off rage and Gilda kind of reluctantly following him is what you should expect from a kid his age. I really like this cast of characters, because even though I would put Ray and Sister Crone as my favorite in the first arc, Norman and Emma are equally as interesting, and they do things that just impress you and wow you. I think they visually really stun me, especially with Norman's nightmare of them dying, and just, you know, Ray saying, this is why I told you you should follow me, and now look at what happened. Someone like Emma and the rest are all dead because you weren't willing to sacrifice the many so the few could survive, sort of a thing. I think they did a remarkable job animating that, and I just like just how this episode looked. It was so disturbing. I love the conversations. It just made you feel like you had the most pent-up anxiety possible and you didn't know how to release it. And it wasn't until the ending song started kicking in, you're hearing that awesome bass, that you kind of feel at ease. at least for a week here. The Promised Neverland is absolutely killing it. I think this, just the way the music directing is being used, the sound directing, and just the vocal performances, like these actors are killing it. They're going above expectations of what I thought these characters could sound like, how they could act, and everything that I was hoping for with this adaptation is so far being met. I really like this, and this is one of those shows that I definitely want to buy on Blu-ray when it does release, because I want to see it in the highest quality possible, and it's just awesome. It really is. But for Anime Originals, how are you feeling about this review? I know a lot of people were speculating, what if there was an actual other traitor and Rei was just the puppet or something like that? Like, what did you think of the revelation of why Rei was doing these things? Do you respect him more or less, or is he still just Rei and how you viewed him originally? For manga readers like myself, what did you think of this adaptation for this week in terms of what you had in your head? Did it meet expectations or did it go below expectations? Because like I said, for myself, it did exactly what I was hoping for. I think the directing was so on point that they really got across those complex feelings, and just the amount of face reactions that were actually terrifying, and then at times some were kind of cute and funny, like Emma learning exactly what happened and like just being shocked of, oh shit, you were the traitor all along, and oh, it's kind of my fault because we didn't pick up the teddy bear and we didn't bring it back, so you told us originally. Like, there's some pretty funny stuff and also some very terrifying stuff. This is why I think it's such a great horror anime, because it doesn't try to be horror, it just naturally comes across as frightening, and it gets these scenes to mean that much more. But let me know, for manga readers, Anime Originals, what are you feeling of this week's episode of The Promised Neverland? Let me know down in the comment section below, and be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. But until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.